All right, guys, we're back with a Unit 7 review. So this is Unit 7. And this was all about right triangle trig and volume. So I know quite a few of you had questions about Unit 7, so there is going to be an opportunity to potentially retake. I will ask a question at the end of this video about that for you. All right, so let's start off at the first thing we learned, which was the Pythagorean theorem. So remember, that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember, C is always our largest side, and it's always the side across from the right angle. So if I were to draw a triangle like this, here is my right angle, and I'm going to go ahead and label my hypotenuse there. Let's say that this is x, let's say that this is 7, and this is 28. Okay, so we want to go ahead and find x. So in this case, my C has to be 28. It has to be the hypotenuse. It has to be across from the right angle. So when I use this, I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Then I'm going to put that 28 in for C. And remember, for A and B, it doesn't matter. A and B can be x or 7, doesn't really matter which order you go, so I'm going to have x squared plus 7 squared. Then I'm going to do x squared plus 49, because 7 squared is 49, and then do 28 squared, which is 784. And now we just have to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 49 from both sides. And get 735. And then we need to go ahead, and this is x squared equals 735. So to get x by itself, we're going to take the square root, but what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And so you're going to get x is equal to 27.1. So that was Pythagorean theorem. Now remember, x could also be the hypotenuse. So keep that in mind, that if x was the hypotenuse, your C value would be x. So you just have to know which value you're putting in for C. All right, the next thing we talked about with our trig was our special right triangles. And on your SAT formula sheet, remember, you get two triangles here. You get 30, 60, 90. And you get a 45, 45, 90. Now on the SAT sheet, they make this x, this is x root 3, and this is 2x. And then remember that they make this side an s. So these are not 5s, these are s's, and s root 2. So those are the relationships between the sides. So let's say that we have something like this. So I've got a 30, 60, 90 triangle here. Let's say that the hypotenuse, I'm going to label as 18. And I'm going to label this as x and this is y. It doesn't really matter. It could have been y and x. It could have been a and b, whatever. So if I want to look at this, I can say that the hypotenuse, and we can always label that hypotenuse first, is 2 times x. So that it's 2 times the smallest side. So my smallest side here has to be 9. And then my medium side has to be 9 root 3. Now, depending on if you liked the tic-tac-toe method, you could have done it this way as well. So you have x, x root 3, and 2x. And then this is what's on your triangle. So my across from my 90 is 18. Across from my 60 in this case was x. And across from my 30 was y. So here, x equals y doesn't help me. X root 3 equals x doesn't help me, but I do have an equation right here at 2x equals 18. If I set 2x equal to 18 and divide by 2, x is equal to 9. That means the x in this row is equal to 9. 2 times 9 is 18. So then this would be 9 root 3. And this would just be 9. And so like we said, y equals 9, x is 9 root 3. So you can look at it in terms of the relationships, or you can do that tic-tac-toe method. The next thing we studied was trigonometry. That's your sine, cosine, and tangent. So that's our SOHCAHTOA. The sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is opposite over adjacent. So if I have a triangle, ABC, and let's say that this is 5, 12, 13. Now there are 3 different types of problems that you can have with trig. The first type of problems is just finding the ratio, just finding that fraction of the trig function and the angle. So let's say we want to know what is the sine of angle A. That's all we're trying to find. So trig function, angle equals fraction. So I'm looking for just a fraction. So let's go ahead and label your hypotenuse. So there's my hypotenuse. And then from angle A, what is closest to it, what is right next to it, is my adjacent. And what is across from it is my opposite. So remember, adjacent and opposite. Adjacent is right next to it, opposite is across from it. Now sine is opposite divided by hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse. So my fraction would just be 5 over 13. And I would leave it there because I'm not asking for the angle this time. I'm just asking for the sine of the angle. Trig function, angle equals fraction. Another type of problem I might have is where I'm trying to find the value of a side length. So let's say I have, we'll make this 23, and let's say I want to find, let's say this is going to be 38 degrees, and I want to find side A. So I'm looking for side A. So I've been given a triangle. I've been given one of the sides, so I can't use Pythagorean theorem. I don't have a 30, 60, 90 or 45, 45, 90, so I have to use trig. So we're going to write SOHCAHTOA again. And then we're going to use this angle here. Before we do that though, I'm going to always label that hypotenuse. And then from this angle, the side closest to this angle is adjacent, so that's the letter A. And the side opposite or across from is over here. Now I have to figure out what 2 sides I'm going to use. So I obviously need to find that side because that's my variable, and I need to use the side that's given to me, 23. So I have A and H. That's cosine. So then we write it out. Trig function. My angle is 38 degrees equals my fraction. Trig function angle equals fraction. The fraction is adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Adjacent being A, hypotenuse being 23. So this is always the setup we start with. Trig function angle equals fraction. Now to get A by itself here, I will have to multiply by 23. So that clears that out. But what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And then this is, remember, where you have to make sure that the mode of your calculator is in degree. If your mode is not in degree, you will get the wrong answer. So I'm just going to put in 23 times the cosine of 38. And I get 18.1. So A is 18.1. All right, the last type of problem that we're going to use, the three types of problems, is finding the angle of a triangle. So let's go ahead and I'll draw a triangle here. Remember, this is not 0, this is theta, a Greek letter. So this is indicating that angle. And let's say I have 10 on this side. Oh, here's my right angle. And let's say I have 18 over here. Okay, so again, I'm going to label my hypotenuse. In this case, it doesn't help us. It doesn't have anything on it. From that angle that I'm trying to find, right next to the angle is adjacent, and then across or opposite is over here. So now again, I'm going to circle the two sides I have. So I have my opposite and adjacent. Opposite and adjacent would be tangent. Opposite and adjacent. I'm going to set it up the same way. Trig function, tangent. Angle, in this case, is theta, equals my fraction. My fraction is opposite, 10, over adjacent, 18. Trig function, angle, equals fraction. Trig function, angle, equals fraction. All right, now this is where we have to use that inverse, because what we're really doing is taking the inverse tangent here to get rid of that and give us just theta. But what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we're going to take the inverse tangent of 10 over 18 as well. In your calculator, here's your tangent, right above is the inverse. So you hit second tangent, 10 divided by 18, and you're going to get 29.1. So theta is 29.1 degrees. Sorry. All right. Then we talked about angles of elevation and depression. So let's say that you are standing outside and you are looking up at a tree. So looking up at a tree, remember, even though they don't always come out of the ground at a right angle, that's what we're going to assume here, that our trees and buildings are coming out of grounds at a right angle. And let's say we're looking up at an angle of elevation of 16 degrees. So you're standing outside, you're looking up at the top of a tree at an angle of elevation of 16 degrees. And let's say you measured and you're standing 50 feet from the tree. And we want to know, how tall is the tree? So you're standing, looking up, how tall is that tree? So we're going to go ahead and label our hypotenuse again. This time we don't need it because there's nothing on there. Right next to the angle, adjacent, is that 50 feet, and looking across is the opposite. So again, I have opposite and adjacent. Opposite and adjacent, again, is tangent. So we're going to say trig function, angle, equals fraction. Trig function is tangent. My angle is 16 degrees, equals, and my fraction is opposite over adjacent, so that's x over 50. Now again, to clear this out, I need to multiply by 50. That's going to get rid of that 50 on that side because 50 divided by 50 is 1. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So we're just going to go 50 times the tangent of 16, and our tree is 14.3 feet tall. The final section in this unit was volume, and since the volume unit, you do get all of the formulas. You should have that sheet of paper taped to the front of your front of your notebook. But if you don't have that, let me know and I will send it to you. But you can use all of the volume formulas. Volume for a prism is length times width times height. For your cylinder, it is pi r squared times height. For your pyramid, it is 1/3 length times width times height. And the same thing for your cone, it is 1/3 pi r squared h. So you should have all of those, and you can use your formulas when you're working on the Go Formative. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.